And, one of our family sayings is don't ask, don't get. And, it works.
Welcome to today's episode of All Bets on Her. Today we will be interviewing Jennifer Steckel Elliott, master marketer turned entrepreneur and mom of 2 young adults. She offers a lot of valuable insights. I took a lot away from it. Yep. Plus, we had a lot of fun doing it.
It was a blast.
Coming up next. Welcome to another episode of All Bets on Her. I'm very excited about today's conversation. We're with Jennifer Steckel Elliott. Thank you for joining us. Today's conversation, we've had a brief chat. I don't know a ton about you yet, but we've had a little bit to chat, and I'm very excited to explore your story. You have a very interesting career path, but I wanted to share a little bit about who you are personally before we kind of dig into that detail. So before we get into it, just to highlight a few things. You're a mom of 2 young adults, so they're kind of off and out to the door. You've just turned 50. You're a lover of books. You're a fitness enthusiast and a self-proclaimed dot connector, which we'll dig into a little bit as well. You have a successful career. If I look back when we found you on LinkedIn, we looked at and saw that you had a very successful marketing career with well-known brands like Danny Leather, Golf Town, IBM. You've done very well. And then all of a sudden you made the decision to get that entrepreneurial bug and jump into building a business. And that was back in 2014. And then maybe I'll turn the story over. You maybe tell us what happened when you went to start your first business.
Okay. Well, so really,
I don't want to take the story. We keep the story the way you've told it.
Yeah, sure. So, based on that timeline, I actually left the corporate world in 2012 because often on the client side, you experience change in your industry and in the factors affecting your industry at a slower rate than the drivers of change.
Right.
So in this case, technology. So I've always had a dual technology and marketing role. And I found that at this particular time, I had been in e-commerce for a long time. I had done B2B, I'd been doing B2C.
Yeah.
But mobile was really just sort of itching at the side of the retail industry.
Right.
And I could tell stuff was moving quickly, but being client side, I didn't have enough time to get familiar with it myself.
Yeah.
And you only know sometimes what your partners are able to tell you.
Right.
And this dot connecting means I often want to know things myself so that I can do better at connecting the dots. And I just felt I really needed to go onto the services side again. As you mentioned, I had been at IBM to be more on the bleeding edge of what was happening.
Right.
So I started my own company, which was really consulting services.
And how old were you at the time then?
I guess 39.
So you would have had kids at that point too.
Yep.
So that's a pretty. I've got 2 kids, and so knowing that jump, that's a big jump.
It is. It's definitely. I started doing that way of managing my career once I had kids.
Right.
Because I really had thought I was on a full-time 100-hour-a-week track for my whole life, except for mat leave.
Right.
And once I had my first daughter, my world changed.
Right.
And my perspective changed. And everyone is different in how they want to spend the time and what their life allows them to do. But I decided I wanted to work as flexibly as I could from that point onward. And I did that for quite a long time.
Yeah.
So I went back full time after my kids had gotten a bit older. And then I went off on my own again to also take a break from the full time.
Right.
So I did a technology startup. When we talk about finances, it was my first time working for nothing. So working for sweat equity. But I really believed in the opportunity. And I also felt that it would give me the hands-on knowledge and experience that I really wanted.
Yeah.
And it did. I think that's the biggest thing when people make these leaps is what do we take from it? And we're often very embarrassed or sort of personally hurt. Our ego is hurt by something that may not have succeeded the same way as you said. Like I had been with IBM and Golf Town, and now I'm with a startup that didn't make it, right? For many reasons. Timing is actually the number one reason they cite for businesses that don't work. It's not the team and it's not the product. It's your timing at the market.
Right.
And it turns out that the product I was working for ended up being very successful in a different vein when the market was ready.
Right.
So I learned lots of that information from that experience.
And just to back it up a step, where did that part of you come from, right? That entrepreneurial, like, is that just something that just, it was innately in you? Did you learn it from family members, or like, where did that, I guess, burn in your belly to do that on your own come from?
So it comes both from like terror and excitement because my dad and my stepmother were both successful entrepreneurs that both experienced setbacks and learned how to go
so
forward.
You've seen it firsthand.
Again, yeah. So I grew up that way. Like, we like to joke that my dad didn't know the Industrial Revolution was over. He just kept having more kids to do work for the family business, right? We weren't farming.
That's a funny joke.
We were packaging, my stepmother's slippers. So I'd be outside doing interviews. Sporting Life was one of his clients. And I'd be like asking them how they heard about us today, because he had just run an ad. So I spent my life like secret shopping.
Did your dad talk to you? I'm always curious in that, parent relationship with their kids. Did your dad talk to you about ever starting your own business, or was it just you were just immersed in kind of day to day? And
I think it was just part of our life. I remember in grade 5, I decided to start my own catalog, and I went door to door selling like magnet toys that I made.
That's amazing.
And, my biggest sale was to my grade 5 teacher.
Wow, better than lemonade stand.
Miss Hazel, right? Yeah, I made a catalog. I made the product, the whole thing.
That's awesome.
Miss Hazel was my first client, and then, I just lost interest in it.
Right.
It was too much work. So, but what I also learned from them is that it doesn't always work.
Right.
And it's a lot of stress.
Yeah.
And so I think seeing that firsthand, firstborn, that drive that you're referring to, and that interest and passion in it is in me. And I continued to have ideas from my catalog through to today.
Right.
I always had ideas. I tended to be a little bit too early for the market. That need to be on the bleeding edge is something I really have to rein in for myself.
Right.
But it can serve you well,
right?
And it's something that I'm always balancing, and it precluded me from doing a lot of my ideas because I'm financially relatively conservative, because I've seen what can happen when you take those risks, right? Sometimes it really works, and they often say it doesn't work unless you take the risk, right? So you just have to figure out the right balance for yourself. And I wasn't interested in doing that,
right?
So I had good corporate jobs that allowed me to save, that allowed me to work more flexibly as I got later in life. So that's where the drive came from.
It's almost like, the way it sounds is, it's like you knew you would end up here, so you were very diligent in saving along the way so that you had the opportunity at some point to invest in yourself, really, as an entrepreneur, to take a chance on your idea.
Maybe. I think, I remember one thing he did say to me when I was young, and I thought I wanted to be an author at one point. And he's like, nope, not till you're 40. You have to go make money first. Authors, can't really focus on it till they have less risk in their life. Which was interesting coming from him because he didn't listen to that own advice.
Right.
But it's something that stuck with me. Like the time for financial risk associated with my career is later, like once I have some savings. So it just sat in the back of my mind. Not that I took that path, but it just sort of sat in the back of my mind.
Right.
And even when I went off on my own in 2012, the hustle that's required to go off on your own was a combination of innate and taught by them.
Right.
Like, again, whether it was her or him, we were always out hustling for both of them. And, one of our family sayings is don't ask, don't get. And, it just, it works.
I like that.
And client service, obviously, with my dad being in retail, I learned a lot about client service, no matter where you are at the table.
Right.
And it just became part of me. Like he ends up being part of whatever interviews I'm doing because I guess I just spent so much time with him. As he was building his businesses. And it just became part of what I did, good and bad.
Yeah.
I've tried to learn from him, and I've also tried to evolve. And we sort of teach each other.
That's amazing.
Which is pretty cool. So I went and I hustled. I got this role with a tech startup, but because I wasn't making any money, I had to have other clients as well.
Right.
So I just balanced my portfolio that way.
Yeah.
And then I decided that I either had to grow and hire more people because I had a few amazing clients, or I had to go back inside a services company.
Right.
And I made or client side, and I made the decision to go back inside. So I definitely feel that I'm better as part of a team. It takes a certain type of personality to work on your own all the time. Yeah. And especially when you do have clients in an intimate relationship, like my role is often like partner to the CEO or to the brand lead or something.
Right.
That's quite an intimate role.
Oh, for sure.
Once someone hires for that, it's similar to your role, Amy.
Yeah.
They don't want you outsourced.
Right.
They don't want your number two.
No, they want to talk to you. Yeah.
And I wanted to be respectful of that. I couldn't see a world where my clients would enjoy that.
Right.
So I went back client side, and I was really happy. Danier was at a new stage. We were going to do some interesting things to wind the company down, actually, and they asked for my help in doing that. And so that was actually a really cool process. I'd never been inside a sale process like that before for a company. And then I had it's not tragic because I'm here and alive, but it's tragic in terms of how it affected my life. I had a massive accident about 6 months after I went back to Danier and had made this new career change and new path in my life that I was pretty excited about.
This was a car accident.
This was a car accident. So I was a pedestrian in a school parking lot.
Oh, geez.
And I was hit head on by an SUV, and I don't think the person was on their phone.
Right.
Everyone assumes they were on their phone. I actually think it was February sunlight. It was 9 years ago this week. And we all know that winter sun that can glare off the snow and get you.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I got a relatively significant traumatic brain injury.
Oh, jeez.
And it just changed the course of my life. It changed everything I could do, managing my time, how I think, what roles I could have, how I'm there for my kids or my family and friends.
Right. That's incredible. And to know that it was 9 years ago. And how did that impact you, I guess, from a financial standpoint? Because you were married at the time, you had 2 young kids, you were in this role, and then everything sort of changed.
I was actually really lucky that I was in the role at the time.
Right.
So when we talk specifically about some of what might really matters to your listeners and the financial perspective is your insurance and what can happen to you when you have a long-term disability.
Yeah.
And we had never thought about that before.
No.
So my husband and I were both really young out of business school when we each got insurance coverage from our companies.
Right.
And we're like, wow, if we get hit crossing the street on business travel, you get some money.
Yeah.
But we didn't realize that is not very much money, actually, even though it seemed a lot when we were young. And we never thought about it again.
Yeah.
But then this happened, and everything that goes along with it, your legal fees, your recovery fees, all that stuff. Thank goodness I had good car insurance, but that's all I had because I had stayed as a contract employee for paperwork reasons, nothing else for a long time. And that's all I had.
Right.
And I hadn't set up any personal insurance, which I should have.
Right.
So that was a big lesson learned. And I was just really lucky that I had the career track record that I did.
Yeah.
So from a mediation perspective, they took that and my next likely steps from a career perspective.
Right.
In mind as they figured out how to remunerate me for what had happened.
Right.
Which is hard.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and that's something, I'm assuming you've probably talked to your kids about, because oftentimes when we talk to clients, you're right. When you're young, you don't think of these things, right? You're going to live forever. Why get a will? Why do any of these things? But that obviously, that moment now sticks in your brain. I'm sure you've educated your own kids on the importance of these things.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't think we've spoken to them specifically about that yet because they still seem so young.
Right.
But even just this, and same for your listeners as a reminder that we should.
Yeah.
My husband was only 32 when he got diagnosed with melanoma for the first time.
Yeah.
And his mom had passed from it. So getting him insurance was impossible.
Right.
So then I was on mat leave and my husband had no insurance, when our kids were young. That was a bit of
stressful.
A mind shake, right? And you still don't think anything can happen to you.
No.
And lots of stuff has happened to us. And so I think we're a good example of what to do and what not to do. as well. I think
that's
we're
how
good
we
savers.
learn, right? And that's what I love about this dialogue. It's not that you've done everything perfectly. As you said before, you're learning and evolving, and just listening to this, it's like, yeah, if you haven't done that, that's an important thing to be mindful and to think about.
For sure. Even after my accident, like when we realized this insurance situation, I couldn't get any either.
Right.
Because now I had a significant problem that they had to see normalize.
Right.
So yeah, you've got to get your life insurance. You've got to get it early.
Yeah.
And then with auto insurance, I just got a reminder last week actually saying, do you want to top up like for any of your kids just in case? And it said long-term disability in the first left-hand corner, and that caught me.
Right.
I was like, oh wow, like while the kids are still on our address,
right,
on our residential address, I should look into that just in case, they should ever need it. Like,
right.
Not that my husband and I may necessarily need it, I hope.
Yeah.
Again, but it's just
that
one of those things about empathy. It's very hard to have it, and it's also sometimes really hard to know if it's worth planning or saving for the rainy day,
right,
when you haven't gone through it.
Yeah.
Which is, again, what we talked about. Hopefully this is a good lesson for.
Yeah.
The rainy days do come. And if you have a cushion, it's really helpful, or at least think about it. And I like to refer to a conscious versus an unconscious decision. Mm-hmm. If you really decide not to do it, you should be aware of what the issues
I love that.
are longer term.
Yeah, that's very good advice. That's great advice. No, I really like that. The other thing we chatted a little bit about is having gone through what you went through, and it's obviously shaped you. One thing you were very good at is talking about the values, your family values. I don't know if that pivotal moment like kind of changed things for you, but we were chatting in our pre-call, you mentioned about value of experiences and education. Like those are important core values to your family. Oftentimes people can't, when they come to meet with a financial person, they think it's all like the stocks and the bonds and all that lovely stuff. But it's really interesting about talking about the values of how you've got to the point where you are, how you've earned it. What was the saying you said? Don't ask, don't get. Those types of mindsets are so important to pass on to your kids as well. Did you and your husband have a conversation about that, or how did you come up with like, these are kind of core values to our family?
I just think we realized early on, we both were really focused on education for our kids and for ourselves. We met in business school.
Right.
It's just kind of natural. We're both interested in schooling. We both like different parts of schooling.
Yeah.
And we both we went traveling right away. So those were just two things that seemed to matter to us. Mm-hmm. And I thought a lot about it after our pre-call. They are our financial values. Yeah. Right? Like being a good human is top of the list in terms of like personal values. Yeah. But in terms of like financial values, we just wanted to build a life where our financial situation was such that, whatever education the kids needed or desired,
that was important,
as was travel. Right. And I do really like to work. I do. And I think a happy mom is a good mom. And not every mom, work is defined in different ways. So I don't want to get into anything around what work is and what moms do and what moms don't. Yeah. I love working. Yeah. And we realized that as long as I worked part-time, we could keep our standards and our interests around travel and education pretty high.
That's great.
So we just looked together at our finances and what we could do for our family. Right. And even after the accident, and I was fortunate enough that Accenture actually hired me with a disability. They hired me initially part-time, and then I went full-time to see what my disability would look like. Yeah. And that was so we could make these values work. Yeah. And, we always thought that our kids may want to go abroad also for education. Yep. So that was important to us as well, that if they choose that, if we can make it happen. To help. Yeah. We wanted to help, and both of us did a lot on our own. Right. So we try to make it clear to the kids that, there's a lot of give. Maybe more, well, definitely more than what Tom and I had ourselves. Yeah. But we're happy to do that. Right. And just because we didn't have it doesn't mean we don't want you to have it, but we just expect you to be thoughtful and mindful about the the good fortune you have to go to school abroad.
Right.
And then I joke that our these financial values may have either really worked or backfired because both children at university in Scotland. So
they're going to be taking care of you.
You know what? They're really happy. And I think that's
amazing.
That's the challenge we have as parents, right?
Yeah.
Like, who wrote this job description? All these things you do in your life for 18 years.
Yeah.
And then they leave?
What the heck?
I was like, I don't know. I don't think the job description was that clear to me when I accepted the role.
It's true.
You know?
It's true.
But to see them so happy is pretty amazing.
That is amazing.
And they choose to spend their time together as well. And that just, I think, makes it all pay off. And
Absolutely.
you can see them now hacking the system around, how to spend their money. And we do budgets. Like, it's not a free for all.
Yeah.
And my daughter asks me sometimes, because she gets a little bit confused when stuff she has to pay for or stuff we'll pay for for her. Both my kids have had jobs. Our kids have had jobs for a long time.
That's great.
And sometimes they have to use their own money, birthday money or earnings money.
Yeah.
And sometimes we'll buy stuff. And she's like, I don't really understand how you make your decisions. I said, I get it. That actually is a bit confusing, and it's really values-based. And for me and for Daddy, it's about what we think a person of your age should have and should be spending their money on. And that's going to be different for everyone.
That's like music to my ears, that you're having those conversations with your daughter, and when she said she didn't understand, that you're breaking it down into terms that make sense to her, and also imparting the value piece on it is so important. Like, that is going to help her so much longer term.
Well, yeah, it forces her to think about, it's very hard because it is very personal and it's very esoteric.
Yeah.
And it's not a criticism of anyone else.
Right.
It's just what works for us.
Absolutely.
And whether it means you have more to donate or you have more to, like, buy only one nice dress instead of 5. Dresses. We all learned about child labor and manufacturing. It's horrible.
Right.
And we talk about that. We talk about the difference in how you spend your money and what impact that has on the environment and stuff.
That's amazing.
And so they always are looking for deals, and sometimes when they make a splurge, they know it's a splurge, and they're kind of proud that they found a deal.
Yeah.
And in fact, my son is trying to get out of paying luggage fees coming up, and he was thinking about wearing his ski boots on the plane. I'm like, you do it.
Do it. I support it. I support it.
Do it. And,
that's TikTok material.
Right?
That would be TikTok material.
And my husband, it kind of goes back to the values. My husband's like, listen, dude, you're paying for your trip. We'll pay for your extra bags. You don't have to wear the boots. I'm like, don't ask, don't get, man. I want to see if he can pull those boots off on the plane and save the luggage fee.
I love that. That is good values to pass on. I love that.
And I'm not saying he has to do it, but I like that it went
mentality,
through his head.
Yes.
He wanted to avoid
mindful
the fee.
of it. Absolutely.
Exactly.
I love that.
So I think that's how we do it. It's more casual.
Yeah.
But it's not something we shy away from. I would say we did shy away from talking about, like, specific numbers when they were young.
Right.
Because I just didn't believe they needed that information.
Right.
Like, you can't contextualize it when you're not earning it and when you're not spending it.
Yeah.
Some people feel differently. That's just how we felt about it.
No, I love that. I absolutely love that. Well, and we remiss not to share the part of the story that I think is very fascinating, is we've kind of come full circle now. So you've actually started a new business.
I have, yeah.
And it's called Lagom.
Yes.
Which is a Swedish word for a balanced lifestyle, which actually, knowing about you now, I'm like, it all comes full circle. I'm like, this makes a lot of sense for you. So tell us a little bit about Lagom.
Thank you for asking. So, as I said, Accenture was very good to me. I had an amazing experience there. And then I had another health issue come up. I ended up with thyroid cancer. So now both my husband and I have had it, both the good kind, if there's such a thing.
Yeah.
And I just knew that I needed to change my lifestyle.
Yeah.
We all know that the services side can be a little bit intense from an hours perspective. And I just needed a bit of a break to get my health back in charge. And so, again, we looked at our finances. We looked at what the kids are doing. We're like, why don't you just take a break till both of the kids are settled? I'm like, fantastic. About 3 months later, I have this idea for, it was originally called What's on My Bookshelf. So I'm an avid reader, as you mentioned early, and I never have room for my books. There's always something coming. With the accident, became audiobooks because I couldn't read at first. And I couldn't put those on my shelf. Like, readers really like to show off. It's a very like distinct characteristic. It's not a bad show off. It's like kind of a nosy show off too. Like, I need to see what's on your shelf. Well, and it highlights
your personality, right? It showcases like what you're into.
Yeah, and we like to know what you're into.
Right.
Like, everyone's always nosy about what's on someone else's shelf.
It's true.
And so
it's true.
So what's on my bookshelf, really is this nosy connotation of both showing off and digging into what's on other people's bookshelves.
Right.
Like for passionate readers, it is quite a core characteristic. And I loved the acronym because it was going to be WOMB. And I really believe you are what you read. And the same way, a human nurtures another human during conception.
Right.
And even as a parent, I really love that, but I decided that word as an acronym would get me in a lot of trouble.
Right.
So I decided to not do that. And I decided, I searched, everyone's always like, where did Google come from? And it actually is like from a number, and it started off as Goggle, right? Yeah. Like, there's all these different ways, these.
I didn't know that.
Right?
Really?
Yeah.
Google
you have
comes
to,
from a number?
Yeah, you have to look it up. It's like beyond infinity.
It's a giant number.
Yeah, it's a giant number. Zeros. And so then you have real insight to the founders when you look at the name of their company.
Yeah.
So this is just something I've done in my career a lot. It comes from brand and marketing.
Yeah.
And I knew that I wanted the intersection of my business to be in between books and decor and design. So then I just started thinking about decor and design and what was happening in the trends. And Hygge is another trend that really, over the last 10 years had really taken North America, sort of the West by storm. It's a more minimalist trend.
Right.
So I was like, what's coming next? And I came across this concept of Lagom. And, it's similar to what you were saying. It's the moderate amount is the right amount. And that's exactly what this is, because you can't keep all of your books. And even if you have the physical books, you don't have space for them. If you're a library person, and I like to call that free shopping, then you don't have them anymore. And then if you're a digital reader or audiobook reader, you don't have them.
Right.
So how can we have a shelf for you? And that's how I came up with the idea. I had started to notice other artists doing something similar, but they were never my books.
Right.
And they were always their books along a specific genre and in a specific decor design. So I figured, based on my experience in technology and this concept, I thought I could make it work at scale.
Right.
And so I didn't take too much time off, but I'm still doing it part-time. So I'm financing it myself. When you go back to the dollars and cents, I had to change my investing strategy.
Right.
So I do a lot more risk investing than my husband.
Yep.
And this is now my risk, so I've had to pull back on other stuff, and I try not to even look at it, actually, because I get very excited.
Yeah.
And I want to invest in something, and I don't put a lot of money into things.
Right.
But I enjoy it, but now my money's all on me, as you said earlier, and I have to be very cautious about that, and I'm really enjoying it.
That's
so
amazing.
As you said, all these experiences have come together.
Yeah.
The challenge, I would say today, and why I call myself Chief Everything Officer.
I love that phrase, Chief Everything Officer. I'm going to dub myself that in the office now.
Right? Well, that's what the CEO is. Although when your company gets bigger, you are able to delegate, right?
Right.
And I'm just not big enough now. And especially, I've been in more senior roles, more executive roles since I was quite young. So my hands-on work, I've been quite removed from that. And now I'm doing it all again, starting when I was consulting, but much more now. So I'm learning a lot more now. And, everything I do every day is a financial decision around the margin of the product, what I'm going to evolve it in and so forth. And it's all my own money. So it's being bootstrapped. We don't really pay enough attention to that. We give a lot of noise to the companies that get invested in. But it takes a lot to look at your finances and plan to allow you the flexibility to do something like this.
Absolutely.
Obviously, I want to make money and be profitable. My husband would like a unicorn.
Yeah.
I don't know that that's going to be me, but I'm certainly enjoying it.
Well, I love the concept, and especially as we see clients as they transition and they downsize.
Yes.
Like, what a great idea. Instead, like, people love their books. I know I have books from high school and university, and I just won't let them go. My husband keeps saying, get rid of these books. I'm like, I really cannot just let go of them.
Still hold your textbooks, Amy?
Yeah, I love them. I spent a lot of money on them.
Now we know what your project can be this afternoon.
I know.
Because someone else can get good use out of your books, and it comes back to values, and it's how my family, how we allocate our funds, how I spend, how we spend our time at work and at play. Like reduce, reuse, recycle. We try to be cognizant of that. We're not perfect. We're not bleeding edge in that area, but we're thoughtful. So, we donate our books. I cry when I donate some of them. My husband made me get rid of all the kids' books, and I still have 4 boxes. And believe me, I gave away a lot.
4 boxes of children's books?
Yeah, because they're amazing.
They are amazing.
So I have some of my own work to do as well. Yeah. But downsizing or moving is certainly a great reason to do it. And then I'm going to do other categories as well, because whether you're a sneakerhead or a stamp collector, it's a way of putting your keepsakes in your collections. You're curating them to show off your narrative.
Right.
And
I love that.
I call them a shelf portrait, because you're telling a story about yourself through your curated collection and your art.
Yeah, it's cool.
I love that. Yeah.
Thank you.
That's great.
Thank you.
Well, Jennifer, I can't thank you enough for coming in today. I've learned a ton. I'm inspired. I loved your family values. That actually really touched me. Just thank you, genuinely. This has been lovely. And I think a lot of people are going to really enjoy hearing your story, and definitely lots of nuggets to take away from it. So
I really appreciate it. It's not easy. And, we're still, I say to my husband, I'm like, we could only be halfway done. Yeah. Like, we have a lot of work to still do, and a lot of experience to still do.
Absolutely.
So the planning, like, it's never too late to start either, right? And make sure that all the boxes are checked. Yeah. So we're mindful of that as well.
I love it. Well, thanks again. And until next time, thank you.